have two questions. The first question, why men and women sit separately during the meditation and in the eating area? To answer this question, let's view these questions from two perspectives. The first one is the religious side, and the other is the cultural side. Men and women, why do we sit separately? Practically speaking, if I'm meditating in here, and if there was a woman sitting next to me just about a foot away, and when I'm sitting, I could be sleeping sometimes. And sometimes I may do it like this. I may rest my head on her shoulder. And a man being too close to a woman, or a woman being too close to a man, would induce the desire of sexuality. And when we are practicing the contemplation, we have the four contemplations. The first contemplation is the contemplation of impurity, the contemplation of uncleanliness. In there, we practice how to avoid thinking about that sexual drive. Because being men and women, because you're being controlled by your karma, you may have that drive in you. And if you say, no, I try to control myself, how well can you control myself? Okay, there's a woman sitting next to you, and you look around, oh, there's a woman sitting next to me, he's 82 years old, so that'd be fine. He's 82 years old, his drooping shoulders, and his skin is all, wrinkles. How would that induce any sexual desire in your mind? So it doesn't really matter. Then the next day comes, and here's a beautiful blonde, sitting just next to you, with a little bit of perfume. Wow, that induced some desire. That's a good fragrance. And then you look around, oh, there's a pretty lady just by my side. What do you think that practitioner would do? Can he meditate really peacefully? I question it. And when the Buddha was coming to an ultimate realization, the Mara sent his daughters to induce Buddha. Even Buddha, coming close to realization, still, if he's not strong enough, would be induced by beauty, by desire. But he was able to overcome it. And just look at newspapers every day. How many crimes, how much wrongdoings have been induced by sexuality. So why do you want to be close to a woman when you're practicing, when the monks are practicing celibacy? They don't marry, but physically, if they're not pure, sure, it's very difficult to be pure because you're still practicing it. Even if you're a monk, you're practicing celibacy. And you're in a temple. I remember many years ago, almost 20 years ago, a very high-level monk brought about 20 disciples, all male, coming to this temple. That's about 22 years ago, coming for leading a 7-day retreat. Leading a 7-day retreat, meditation retreat. And they were from Gaominsi, from a very famous temple in Yangzhou, very famous. All meditators in there, they meditate 5-6 hours per day, at least. And after the 7 days retreat, we went out to a vegetarian restaurant at lunchtime. Which restaurant? Is that restaurant in Richmond, Bao Guangzai, that restaurant in Richmond. And of course, the head abbot who led led the meditation retreat was sitting in there with 20 disciples, all male. The owner of that shop was an actress from Hong Kong. And being courteous, she came out to entertain these monks. And I saw, I'm very observant. I noticed that the face of the old abbot changed. And they hurriedly swallowed down all the food. And the old abbot said, "Oh, let's go, let's leave." Because the woman was entertaining around, trying to talk to the monks. And some of the young monks, gained some glances at the beautiful actress. What is in her mind, in his mind? But this seducing, not seducing, but there are enchanting environments around that would affect the practitioner's attitude. So why do you want to create an attitude that would confuse the pure and attempting for enlightenment practitioners? So why don't you create a good environment? Why are you still polluting your environment? Well, you can. Of course, we cannot exclude the females from the male. That's not practical. But why do you want to mix them together? Why do you want to be body close to each other? Do you have any idea in your mind? I have seen newcomers. I have seen new acquaintances who came to the temple for meditation, and they have another intention in their mind. They wanted to know some ladies in here. So we have to watch out. There are bad fruits in the good fruits of trees. There are bad branches in hundreds of branches of a big tree. These bad branches could have some worms in it, could induce some worms coming to it and spread it to all the trees. Why do you want to create an environment? So to be practical, we want to segregate. We can't stop women from coming, or for that reason, we can't stop men from coming. So we have to segregate. This side is women and this side is men. Are you satisfied with the answer? If you're not, too bad. That's from the, yeah?
I also wanted to add that it also reminds us that we are on a solo journey.
Yeah.
And we have to practice for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good comment. You depend on yourself. Even if the ladies are opposite you, you still can see the ladies, but you know that you depend on yourself. It's a solo journey. We want to create an environment that would not induce anything that is enchanting to you, that would take away your attention. But still, it's a solo journey. You've got to tread your own path. You've got to walk your own way. Nobody can walk it to you. That's your way. That's my way, your way. So it's very important that you must not have that kind of thought in your mind. And we try to create an environment that would not induce that thought in your mind. It's just like the old abbot want to say, let's finish the food and let's leave. Because he don't want the young monks to mix around with the actress. And sometimes a good monk, if his environment is not good, will be induced to discard his robes and become a layman. I have seen monks who, after a few years, more and more ladies come into the temple, and one day he struck up an acquaintance with somebody he thought that he knew in his last lifetime. He discarded his robes and became a layman and got married. Because the environment comes that he wants to get married. He stopped his practice. And what happened to that monk? He feels sorry about it later. Because what happened after he got married? He got married, he got 2 kids. He got all this burden of the family lay on his shoulder. He has to work. He could not practice anymore. And sometimes the family have arguments. and then he had to be responsible for the education of the kids. And the kids got sick, he had to bring them to the doctor. Had to make sure that he had to buy the house because his wife has been grumbling for buying a house and owning their own house in the family. He could not rent anymore. He had to work 3 jobs, no leisure time, no practice. And all of a sudden, after 20 years, he became 45 years old. He couldn't do it anymore. So, why do you want to create an atmosphere where the female and the male mix together? That's from the religious side. Yes? Yes.
Venerable, I understand that the separation of male and female in living quarters when we eat in meditation hall, but a lot of the nuns are very wise.
Yeah.
Would we not benefit from teachings from the sisters or their wisdom in some situations?
You mean in exchange?
Yes.
And of course. Well, you maintaining a distance does not prevent you from exchanging information, exchanging what you learn, exchanging ideas, especially in the Western culture in North America, where there's what we call quote unquote democracy. Everybody is allowed to speak up what he wants to say, but it doesn't prevent you from exchanging views. But make sure that you always maintain that objectivity. It's just views that you're exchanging, and not the enrichment of an emotional tide. Or you become interested in him, and he's become interested in you. And of course, in the first conversation, it's just daily, hello, how do you do? And then you speak more, you talk, you continue to talk, and then you breathe up a relationship. Everything starts from minute little step. But of course, if you're always mindful of yourself, this mindfulness is important. If you're always mindfulness of yourself, it does not matter where you go. Your mind. But how well can you be mindful of yourself? We don't know. In the Surangama Sutra, Alanda went on alms round, and he came to a prostitution house, and he got seduced and charmed by a prostitute. At that time, he was close to a saint. He couldn't control himself. And then the Buddha knew about it, and he ordered manjushri to take a mantra of protection and got him back. And that starts the Surangama Sutra about how to control one's mind. You understand? Right?
Yes.
And that's so much for the religious side of it. That's the reason. It's not because of discrimination. We discriminate the woman, so we want to make the woman subservient. We make the woman away. No. You are on one side, the man on one side, and the woman on the other side. But it's the same level. It does not matter what side. The left side or the right side, it's two sides. We're not saying that the women sitting in the stool are lower than the men. No, that's not it. You measure the stool. If you find a stool that is 2 inches lower, you talk to me. It's not. So you're at par with them. They are at par with you. That's from the moral side. How about from the cultural side? I would say, I may be wrong, if you look at the cultures of the world, many cultures are men-oriented families. Men, since the ancient times, in hunting, even up to now, it's a male-dominated society. Of course, sometimes the woman empress, that is ministers, Margaret Thatcher, Prime Minister of Britain, strong Iron Lady, we call it Iron Lady. But how many occasions will women become presidents, women become prime ministers? And if you count the organizations, how many women are CEO? More and more so now. But still, male outnumber the women. Because culturally, it's a male-dominant society. And being that, if you line up for anything, naturally, especially in India, especially in the ancient times of India, where women were subservient to men. Women are secondary in India. And in China too. I don't know the Middle East. Certainly there are many cultures in the Middle East where women are subservient to men. Of course, there could be revolutionary ideas that they should all be equal. But there's still a long way to walk. Women are struggling for it. But sometimes there's so many other problems. Why put this forefront to consider where we have many, many other social problems? Global warming, pollution, wars, all these things to care about. And you're caring about the status between men and women? Women are getting more and more power. Women are getting more and more educated than before. In the ancient times of China, women, before the Tang Dynasty, women were not allowed to remarry if their husbands died. They would be widows all their life. They were not allowed to remarry again. But since Empress Wu Zetian, women are allowed to remarry when their husbands died. Because Empress Wu was a woman. He was a woman. And in her previous king was Tang Taizong. And the king that she married to is Tang Gaozong. And Empress Wu was actually a maid in the palace, falling in love with Taizong, with Gaozong. And then when Taizong passed away, the king passed away, all the women had to go to nunnery. There was a practice in China. When the king passed away, all the women, the concubines, all the all the ladies in the palace, they had to become nuns. So this Empress Wu, later empress, but became a nun. But later, then he marries to Gaozong, the son of Taizong. Well, this is a long Chinese history. I'm not going to get into Chinese history. It's very complicated, very complicated. So, culturally speaking, women are subservient. And they always line up as a second place to men. But here we're not dealing with cultural traits. We're not considering any cultural traits because Canada is a mixture of all nations. It's a mixture of all cultures. We're considering only from the moralities point of view, from the practicality point of view. We don't want men and women to touch each other, to body each other. You see, in the Western culture, when two friends meet, they hug each other. Not in China. Men can hug women in here and women can hug a man in here. You stay away from that. Don't hug our Bhutanese. You're in troubles because it's not allowed to do so. Okay, so you will never see a Chinese monk hugging a Caucasian woman. If that's the case, there will be news next day. So, that answers that question. Next question. As a long question, I have to confess that today's lecture was difficult for me to understand. I have some questions. First, what is the profound meaning of emptiness? In your case, what do you do to break the ice of anger? How can we see the emptiness of anger? I have been working with my anger, but when I feel it, it controls me. I would like to make this parenthesis to take or realize it. Can you help me? Well, I try to. Today's lecture is difficult because it says, Suputi, don't think, the Buddha said, Suputi, don't think that I'm teaching a Dharma. There's no Dharma to be taught. Don't think that you're listening to the Dharma. There's no Dharma to be listened to. Well, the Buddha is teaching a Dharma verbally. How come the Buddha is saying that the Buddha is not teaching a Dharma? When the Buddha was teaching a Dharma in the ancient times, he was teaching from what body? From the Nirmanakaya, from the transformation body. If you think that, okay, the Buddha has something to teach, if you think that when the Buddha is teaching, in his mind, he's thinking of, I have something to teach. I'm organizing this. I'm trying to present it in this way. I'm differentiating this. I'm discriminating that. Then, all of a sudden, you are thinking the Buddha is like an ordinary sentient being like you and me. Because we think with the deluded mind. We think with the unreal mind. And you think that the Buddha has something to say, you are thinking that that Buddha's mind is using the same mind as I'm doing when I'm speaking, so that Buddha is me, similar to a sentient being. So the Buddha said, you cannot say the Buddha is speaking any Dharma. Because if you say so, you are slandering the Buddha. You see what I mean? Because when the Buddha says Dharma, he's saying it from the pure mind. The pure mind has no delusion. The pure mind has no thought. If it has no thought, how can he has anything to say? I think you should understand that now, because the Buddha is just reminding you, don't think about that. It's just like a mirror. The mirror, as I give an example, the mirror reflects everything, but the mirror has no intention to do so. The mirror is here, you walk into it, it reflects you. But the mirror has no intention itself to reflect you. It has that reflectability. Whether it intends to reflect you or not, it has that reflectability. But this poor mirror, he thinks that he reflects you. But it does not matter, he has that reflectability. But the poor mirror does not know, like you and me. The pure mirror has no attachment to any images in the reflection. Because you come into the mirror, you're being reflected. But the mirror does not attach to the images. Well, you're gone, you're gone. The mirror does not attach to it. But this poor mirror, he attached to the image. He thought that that image is in his mirror. You understand what I mean? How can you say, mirror, you have something to reflect? How can you say, Buddha, you have something to say? How can you say, Buddha, you have an intention to say? The mirror has no intention to reflect. Are you clear with this? So, the Buddha has no teaching to say. In that case, in your case, what do you do to break the ice? First of all, what is the meaning of emptiness? Therefore, in emptiness, there's no form, nor perception, nor volition, nor consciousness. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, or object of mind. No form, sound, smell, touch, or object of mind. Because there's nothing to be obtained. So what is emptiness? What is emptiness? Emptiness is no different than form, and form is no different than emptiness. What is emptiness? Emptiness, what is the definition of emptiness? Emptiness does not mean there's nothing. Just, of course, emptiness is nothing. If we really want to define emptiness means nothing has any real nature of its own. If it has its real nature, its reality, then it would exist all the time. If it has real reality, it transcends cause and effect. In other words, everything is subject to causality, to cause and effect. They don't have a real nature. It's impermanent. It arises out of causality, and it will disintegrate. And it doesn't have its own permanent existence. It arises because of a conglomeration of causes put together. So when we see something, we see through it, it is not what it appears to be. When you're angry, I'm angry. When you see anger, when you see emptiness in the anger is not anger. You break that anger. Why? I'm very angry. And immediately I come to realization of the emptiness of anger. Then the emptiness, the anger would not become an obstacle to me anymore. I break through the obstacle. But you still stick to that anger. Somebody says something bad about me. I remember it. I'm not happy. I remember that. Poor you, you didn't see through the emptiness of that unhappiness that you've got in your mind. You've got to see it through. You've got to see the emptiness of it. If you see the emptiness of it, anger is not anger. That is why it is anger. If you see anger as not anger, then the true anger comes out. The true anger is emptiness. Is it confusing? Well, you got to think about it. If you see that A is not A, you break the A. That is the true A. If you see B is not B, or if you see B, if you see the emptiness of B, or the non-B elements of B, then B becomes the true B. You see that? You still don't know. You should come more often. And you say, the guy who's talking about this, is he still angry? That's me. And I would tell you, yes, but it depends on how long you linger that anger. Because I'm not enlightened yet. If I'm enlightened, no anger would pierce through me. But if my anger comes, I immediately use my contemplation, I subside it, I see through it. I immediately analyze the emptiness of it. I still use my conceptual dimensions to break through that iceberg of anger. But I'm a little better because I know emptiness. I can resolve it. I got that machine in my hand that I can break through the ice of anger, and you don't. It's good that I got the machine. The Buddha does not need that machine. He sees through things immediately. He sees things as it appears. He does not see it as it appears to be. He sees through the real nature of it. And some people would never have a chance to get that piece of machine to break through the ice of anger. That's why they committed crimes. They hurt people. They kill people because their anger lingers on. Wars lingers on. Genocide lingers on. Killing of animals lingers on. Because they don't see the emptiness of it. It becomes an obstacle to them. It becomes a danger. It becomes a mental affliction. It brings karma. Imposes the karma on the whole body, on the whole entity. And it reincarnates life after life after life in suffering. So how can we break through the ice of anger? If anger comes up, jealousy comes up, uneasiness comes up, do you allow to linger on? I have seen people, I've said something bad to you, and I can see your face all quote unquote screw up. Your face. For the whole day. For the whole day. Because you don't have that machine to break through the iceberg, the ice of anger. For some people, after you said something uncomfortable to him, immediately he laughs it off. I remember when I was a teenager, I liked reading Treasure Island by R.L. Stevenson. Is it Louis Stevenson? Treasure Island? That's the book that youngsters love to read. And I still remember that sentence I like. I remember that sentence was always uttered by Captain. And he said, when something is bad and you can't change, you just laughed at it. Well, when something comes up that makes you angry, you don't get anger, you just laugh it off. There's another machine that people use. You laugh it off, that means, so what? Anger. I'm not going to induce my anger, and I'm not going to hurt people because of this anger. You got methods to deal with anger. Do you have that method to deal with anger? Different people have different method, different weapon to deal with certain emotional feelings. And some people never learn to build up the weapons, to build up the defensive mechanism. Do you have that defensive mechanism? The Buddha don't need the defensive mechanism anymore, because in his mind is emptiness. He sees through it immediately. When it comes up, he sees through it immediately. It never comes up again. No anger would come up from it, because it's all pure. That anger is from the mind, that diluted mind that we have. So how do you deal with your anger? When anger comes up, don't express it. Analyze it. See through it. Maybe you meditate and see, what is this anger? What's the cause of this anger? Maybe when you analyze it and narrow down the cause, it could be just about something very insignificant, very trivial. I've heard stories that people kill for the triviality of $1. Trivial matters become big. So you just sit back and analyze it, meditate on it, see the emptiness of it. It's causality. It's many causes put together that anger arises. So that's how you do it. You control it and you see through as empty. Maybe also you see through as a debt repayment. Oh, last lifetime I was always angry to him, and now he's just paying it back. He's just being angry to me again. He was in my last life he was my spouse, and I was always yelling at him. Now he becomes my husband. He's yelling at me again to get even with me. That happened that way too. It's a repayment. It's an emotional debt repayment, other than the monetary debt repayment. There's many things that happen in this world. There's an intermingling of a hodgepodge of causes put together to make something come true. Nothing is without a reason. You are angry because there's a reason for it. Control it and analyze it, contemplate on it, see the emptiness of it, see the triviality of it, and then it will dissolve.